Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. This time we'll be looking at, well, the Tempestral GHB tier list update, something I haven't done in quite a while. For those who have not been keeping up, this is now a monthly thing. It's just that the first time was, well, it was Heath, then it was Flame Emperor, so I decided I'm just going to tag all three of them in one go. Because I want to always tackle the Tempestral GHB tier list update on the second half of a month, since the first half of the month already has the refined tier list update to work on. So splitting the Tempestral GHB tier list update for one half and the refined tier list for the other half just kind of makes sense. The Sacred Seal tier list will also be updated around this time, give or take. Yeah. I have three characters here, and my god, Flames Emperor's name for the name tag was a pain in the ass to work on. So, as per usual, I'll be going from worst to best, and, well, let's get started. And first off, we start with Heath. What a surprise! I bet no one could have guessed that the Lance Flyer was the worst of the bunch. Whoa! With such amazing skill like Attack, Def, Push 3. Well, Heath, to be fair, is actually not that horrible. The stat line is really good. It's kind of a similar case of Cormag, where the stat line is good, the everything is good, it just doesn't have a pref to work with is the problem. And therefore, it just kind of falls flat. There's not much I can even talk about when you're just talking about the stat line itself without comparison, so, you know. Well, outside of, well, this is the first merge, which, of course, is highest stat at level 1 has to be defense. I wish I was making that up, but no. It actually is, by far, his highest stat. Therefore, he gets no point in speed in his first merge. Fantastic, isn't it? Honestly, if it had been attack and speed, it would be in an even better position. But the fact that he wastes a point in defense instead of speed is kind of a bummer, let's be honest. So, let's compare him to the other Lance Flyer. Woo! I'm also not going to compare him to Est, Katria, and so on and so forth. But do know that if you're in the Lance Flyer category, you're not meant to be a damage dealer, like an exclusive damage dealer. There's just way too much competition. Cordelia as an insane refine, even though people don't seem to understand what makes it so good. Katria as well as Est also have fantastic weapons and refines. Where the heck would Heath even, like, be compared to at that point? It's like you're comparing a 4 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10. It's pure suicide. So instead, we're talking about mostly units that are multi-phase. Units that are able to deal good in player phase or enemy phase, while also being able to take hits, dishing out damage, but also being able to take damage. Because that's the one thing that Katria and Cordelia can do. It's take damage. You do not enemy phase with a Cordelia, that actually will fuck you over. That's just how it is. And Est and Katria can, to some extent, have an enemy phase, but typically you're going outside of their weapon to do so. Or you just ignore the refine altogether and just refine to death or res, in Katria's case. In Est's case, just don't even bother personally, but you know. So, it's rare I actually showcase also a seasonal unit, but you have to understand Narshan's stat line is extremely comparable. and it's also extremely accessible. The problem with Cormag as well as Heath is that they take 1750 grails to +10, and that's considering the rerun. By the way, if you're not considering the rerun, it's even worse. But I'm obviously going to consider the rerun, since after all, that's kind of a given that it's going to happen sooner or later. 1750 grails versus what it takes for Narshan to be +10, which on average should be 550, 600 orbs, which is about a bit less than 2 months worth of orbs. Yeah, that's how easy it is to +10 a focus 4-star. Obviously, you can be unlucky. Obviously, you can be lucky. It all comes down to luck. Still, on average, you're getting 1 per 50 to 60 orbs, I'd say. So it's pretty consistent. And therefore, it's an actual decent project to work on. If you like the character, of course, this is kind of just the given in general when it comes down to seasonal 4-star focus. If it's not a seasonal, just don't bother. It's going to drop into the 3 to 4-star pool anyway. The 3 to 4-star pool is a joke to get units from, and it's just a question of time at that point. So going for the focus 4-star in those banners is kind of redundant. But well, this is not exactly the topic of discussion, is it? I think you get the gist, though. It's fairly easy to do a 5-star +10, and it also doesn't cost you like 5 months worth of grails, if not more. Or maybe a tad less if you have the Fat Pass, but you know. And of course, if you compare him to Cormag, Cormag has 1 more attack, 1 less speed, 1 more def, and 4 less res, but ooh, 2 more HP. Yeah, it's overall you can actually make a strong case that Heath is a slightly better Cormag. It's very slight, mind you, because, well, Cormag does get 1 more point in attack, which in his case does matter. The speed difference between Heath and Cormag does matter and does actually help Heath a little. Since basically at that point all he really needs is flowers and then a +6 in speed, and he's actually at 47, which is the right number to be at. And therefore, you know, it's a bit less shaky than Cormag. Cormag can be in a bit of a weird situation as a result. And Heath has also the advantage of having more res, and having def and res set up in such a manner that brazen attack res does work and do wonder for him. One of the things you can do in general with Cormag is not refine to speed, but instead refine to defense. And especially if that becomes a seal at one point, run brazen speed res as the seal. If that becomes a seal, otherwise you have to run brazen attack speed, which is not ideal since your res is still going to become shaky, but it actually makes up for the issue that he has in speed, pushing his speed up to 48 with a buff. Still, overall, Heath is honestly pretty superior to Cormag. Not by much, but definitely enough to say that if you were to do a project of one or the other, you should focus on Heath, not Cormag. As far as why Tsubaki is there, it's kind of the same situation as Narshan. He's a very accessible unit, a 3 to 4 star unit. And to put things in perspective, because of his weapon he has 42 speed, which means with a 6 speed increase he jumps to 48. Already there, you're at a good spot. You don't need any more for your speed. Your def is at basically 42, which is the highest of everybody here. The res is also at 36, which again is the highest of everybody here. HP is at 49, which is actually the worst of all of them, but not by a whole lot. Whereas when it comes down to res, you're literally 5 points ahead of everyone, if not up to 10. So, you know, worth mentioning. The only thing he's really behind is attack, but not even by that much. He ends up at 48 attack because of Golden Naginata, which means there's a gap of 5 attack to 7 attack. But the thing is, you can just combo double Brazen Attack Res. Or, in this case, since this is Res Plus, you can just run 1 Brazen Attack Res as the seed. And suddenly the attack difference is non-existent. While others here can also run Brazen Attack Res, they do run into the problem of, man, I wish I had better stats somewhere else. Unless they're Narshan. Narshan kind of just already has enough speed, already has enough def, and to some extent Eve also, as I said, with, you know, the Dragon Flowers. But even then, Tsubaki is kind of this type of unit that's so accessible that compared to these unit, which mind you, Eve and Cormag are gated behind 5 months of AR to get the +10. Narshan is gated behind 600 orbs. Tsubaki is basically free and you have so many of them it's not even funny. So, you know, there's definitely that as an advantage for Tsubaki, but also just in general, his weapon is very easy to work with. And, well, that's kind of it. Though I will say one thing, if you're going off of cooldown -1, Narshan is overall better than Tsubaki and is probably the best of the 3 because he has access to IVs. And you know, he can just go Res Plus if he wants. It's really up to him. I've already made a whole video about Narshan. Well, not just Narshan, but the entirety of the banner he came up with. And, well, as far as Eve is concerned, I'm not going to showcase builds, because if you want to know how to build him, just look at the video what I've made with Narshan. Every set I've made on Narshan should also work on Eve as long as you have flowers on him. Which should not be difficult because we're literally showered with flying and cavalry units as free units constantly. So, you know. But yes, if you want to have a better idea of what type of build you can run on Eve, do watch my video I've made. Do watch the video I've made on familial festivities, because I've already covered Narshan there, and he's basically the same unit to some extent. It's just that Eve will have a bit more rest to play around with. That's it. That's all the difference there is. That, and also because Narshan is overall better than Eve, and Tsubaki is more accessible than Eve and does more or less the same thing. So yeah. Oh, and also, if you're really afraid about your damage, you can just take the Refine with Golden Naginata, and you have an extra 7 true damage on that, which more than makes up for it. You end up at 55 attack effectively. So yeah, let's talk about Bartre next. Wow, what a surprise! The Sword Infantry is not the best unit. Yeah, all of this should be very obvious. Anyway. So, Bartre comes in with 3 useless skill and a good weapon. I say this because, seriously, waves? Seriously, waves? Rouse skills exist and they're literally waves on cocaine. Who cares about even attack wave? However, the Carrot Cudgel is a very good weapon. Similar to the weapon Narshan comes with, the Guild Fork, it is an extremely good weapon. I actually fathered one of my Bartre for my New Year Guntra, and now she literally cannot be debuffed in attack and defense. Also hits somewhere around like 50 def and res, depending on the enemy's res, because I use Pegasus Flight on her. It's all good fun. It's all good fun, yes. I believe she hits actually 47, 49 def and res, and then with Pegasus Flight, upward to 54, 56. Yeah, this weapon is insane. There's a lot of things you can do with it, though frankly, in general, the main problem is that it's a sword, and it runs into the same issue as the lance of there's more unit with high defense and low res than there is the opposite. This is even more true for sword units. That's really the main issue Cudgel has. If we'd had this weapon but it buffed attack and res, it would be way stronger. Still, even then, it is a good weapon for units who have lower def than res, especially flyers, mostly Sita. My New Year Guntra, it's kind of hard to say for other flyers. Mostly flyers who have equal def and res that you want to just take this weapon, refine it to res, and then the defense from the weapon just kind of makes it more or less even again. This is the kind of unit. This is kind of the same situation as my Guntra. Obviously, the Cudgel is going to work wonder there. It just, as I said, if it was attack res, it would be a much stronger tool. Still, it is, again, a very good tool. And definitely, I would say, while Bartre himself is not that amazing, this weapon is really good. So, if anything, don't fodder him for fucking obstruct or even attack wave. Fodder him for the carrot cudgel. That's what I would say. It's not exactly worth keeping around in general, but very good weapon to keep around for a unit that could definitely use it. I can actually see characters like Lloyd use it really well as well. This first merge is, again, attack and defense. Actually, that's pretty much the same first merge for everyone in this batch of units. They all buff their attack and defense, and def is their main stat. As far as comparison, here's the other two I compared him with. Itsuki was a dead giveaway. Obviously, I've put max flowers on all of them because Soleil is a Gen 1 unit. Some people don't like it, but again, I'll say this again. If you think that maxing flowers is something that's unfeasible, keep in mind that getting 5 flowers on a Gen 1 unit is very, very cheap, whereas getting 5 flowers on a unit like Itsuki or Bartre is a lot more expensive. So the 5 flowers on Soleil is extremely doable. In which case it just ends up comparing them with no flowers to Soleil with 5 flowers. It ends up being the same thing. Anyway, so as you can kind of see with Itsuki ends up having 3 less attack and def, as well as 5 less HP, but 7 more res, which allows him to ploy for 1, among other things, and 5 more speed, which actually helps him tremendously in running several weapons. I also could have compared the two of them, or rather Bartre, to Avil, but there's really no point in doing so. Avil is a 5-star exclusive unit, and therefore it's not really worth comparing to a free unit. Another unit that's worth comparing Bartre and Itsuki to is also Astrum. Astrum is worse than Itsuki in every way, but for Bartre, he more or less has the same attack. Actually, no, he has much less attack. 5 less attack, I think. More speed, more def, or not more def. Actually, I think he has only 1 less defense, and a much worse rest stat. Overall, Astrum is a bit better, purely for the fact that he has a speed stat. That's really the main issue with Bartre. His speed is decent, but you have to very, very, very much work your ass out on him for his speed to be worth something or to be all of decent. The problem with this is that Itsuki also exists. They're both Tempestral unit, and Itsuki is overall just a better version of Bartre. So, yeah, not much of a reason. And speaking of unit with more or less equal def and res, he's a good unit to use the Carrot Cudgel on, because he ends up with 43 def for having someone near him, and then refining the weapon to res makes him have 41 res, so 43, 41. But yeah, typically you'll be refining to speed either way when it comes down to Itsuki, unless you are reliant on a bond. And Soleil is here also because, honestly, the stat line is fairly comparable. Less HP of course, but only 2 less attack, 10 more speed, only 4 less def, and equal res. Of course, she has, you know, worse stats for most of the stats, but again, speed stat is actually workable. Def stat is not even that much behind. In general, Soleil is just pretty solid, and Soleil is a 3 to 4 star unit. Soleil has an insanely good stat line, especially back when she was first released, and even now she still has one of the best stat line. Sure doesn't help the fact that, you know, the last 3-4 star unit added to the red pool outside of Bento was Sylvia. I am not joking. You can check if you don't believe me. Sylvia was indeed the last demote we had for red. So kind of hard for her to be challenged in any way, shape or form, because the only red we get are 5-star exclusives. And in a lot of cases, she's actually better than those 5-star exclusive. Looking at you, Braveholm. So, you know. Overall, Soleil is a fantastic unit. So, in general, if you're going to go for Bartre, one of 2 things you can do is just, well, go for Itsuki instead, because Itsuki has a rest stat, which allows him to just ploy and also offer support to your team. Or if you want to have just a stat line similar to Bartre, able to take damage when required, or also being able to double a lot more consistently, then use Soleil. So yeah. Bartre becomes a bit redundant as a result, and therefore there will be no build for him because there's no point in ever really building him. Unless you like the character. You know? Unless you like the character. And now last but not least, the Flame Emperor. Coming in with Bracing Stance 2, but again. Thank you, Conrad Jr. Very cool. So he also comes in with the Guard Axe, which for some reason is new, because we totally did not get another axe armored unit that also just so happened to have a weapon that works in a very similar manner. No, we totally didn't. Nope. But joking aside, it's basically, you know, just Pumpkin Smasher, I believe it's called. Bleh. And, yeah, Flame Emperor is kind of just Dorcas, but again, not just in weapon, but in stat as well. As far as Skits is concerned, he basically has no fodder. Bracing Stance is a good skill overall, but we already had Conrad for this. I guess if you just don't care about Flame Emperor, but you cared for Conrad, this is another source of it, so cool. It can be helpful on certain dancers, and that's kind of it, really. As far as the first merge is concerned, yeah, what a surprise. Actually, no, you actually prioritize attack over defense, but the result is still the same. You get HP attack def. Cool. As far as comparisons are concerned, I'm going to compare him to Ephraim. Brave Ephraim, as well as Dorcas. Dorcas is a no-brainer, but let me explain Brave Ephraim. Brave Ephraim is the most accessible green axe unit that is not a Tempest Trail / GHB unit. Let me explain. Every year we get Hero Fests around the same time of the year. Don't remember exactly what month. But in that month, every Choose Your Legend character appears on a Hero Fest banner. I'm pretty sure you remember this. We got basically tickets. I believe it was 5 tickets per banner. I think it was for the anniversary, so it's probably in February that we got this. And essentially we got a new Hero Fest every week for like Choose Your Legend 3, Choose Your Legend 2, Choose Your Legend 1. And it's going to become basically the same thing every year. So, in general, random piece of advice. If you care about Dimitri, if you care about Claude, if you care about Edelgard for some bizarre reason, if you care about these characters, or Lysithea also, if you care about these characters, don't bother summoning on their first intro banner. Wait, like, what is it, like 4 months for the anniversary, and there you go. You're going to have a Hero Fest with these characters, which is just infinitely better than summoning on the normal three-person banner format. Those banners are absolutely horrendous when it comes down to rates. Hero Fest is at least a good chunk better, so, you know. Just my 2 cents on that. But, yes, so Brave Ephraim ended up appearing in like 2 or 3 Hero Fests, as well as I think two legendary banners. He is quite common, and he actually has a pretty good stat line as well. If you were to switch out of Garm, you would lose 5 might, of course. However, because you have a speed stat that's actually very easy to work with, and of course Slaying Axe can be refined to speed, pushing your speed up to 37, a whole 5 points above the other 2, well, Ephraim becomes overall a fairly much more competent Dorcas or Flame Emperor. So overall, if you have either worked on a Brave Ephraim or wish to work on one with Hero Fest and all that, he is overall better than these two and is a lot more accessible than these two. As far as acts are concerned, Amelia is, I don't want to say better, but she can be better, essentially. I do think Ephraim is slightly better because he basically is Amelia with a rest stat, which is a lot more dangerous to deal with. Because Amelia is a clear weakness, Ephraim would not have a clear weakness. And that helps tremendously, especially in the end of the player, where you can just have something like Speed Res Bond with a buff in speed, Slaying Axe refined to speed, and in which you end up with 48 speed, which combos into his own special fighter, and, you know, combo this into Bonfire, get hit, proc, you know, and you get to have a second hit on top of it. Garm is not that amazing of a pref, I'm sorry. The fact that his speed is actually this good, that's the main reason why Brave Ephraim is actually still good. Which is funny, because when he was first launched, Ephraim was considered to be trash because his speed was in an awkward spot, unlike Brave Hector. But that's actually the one reason why he's still good. So yeah, Brave Ephraim is overall better than these two. Dorcas is a worse Flame Emperor, as you can kind of see here. The only thing he has is 1 more attack at the cost of 1 HP and 5 res. Woo! Like I said, he's basically just Dorcas 2.0. So, I actually decided to make builds for Flame Emperor because the difference between Flame Emperor and Ephraim is that Ephraim still costs quite a bit of orbs. If you want to plus 10 him, It's probably going to cost you 1k or 1.2k orbs if I were to guesstimate. That's still a good chunk, and therefore, you know, Flame Emperor does have a purpose. Not to mention, unlike Dorcas, he is a GHB unit, so getting him to plus 10 is still only 1750 grails, which is fairly doable. Obviously, if you're going to merge him up, wait for his rerun for the last copy. Don't just plus 10 him in advance like a certain Speedy Hog did with R. But, yeah. Here's the first build. The Faithful Axe is really his weapon of choice. If you really want to use this character, the Faithful Axe is almost a requirement. That, and you also kind of really want flowers. As you can see, even right now, all I hit is 46 speed. So, of course, flowers are a bit better. There is one thing you can also do that's really good for the Flame Emperor, and it's to combo him into Legendary Eliwood. After all, this would actually push his speed easily to already 44 before having the Faithful Axe, which allows him to run Slaying Axe instead. So, you know, you can just basically run this, but with Slaying Axe and Bonfire. Which means you can just get hit and proc Bonfire right away. Or you can run Soul if you want to have extra, you know, sustain. If you do that, typically at that point, you still want the speed res bond because 44 speed is not enough. But you'll be at 49 speed, which is pretty good with speed res bond. So, yeah. Another thing you can do is just keep the Faithful Axe regardless with Legendary Eliwood support. But the difference here is that you could run Attack Res Bond as the seal instead to offer a bit more oomph if you're going to go for something like Soul or Noontime, I suppose, in this case. Overall, it's fairly solid for him. Just like I said, Legendary Eliwood is very solid as a teammate for Flame Emperor because he just has enough attack to begin with. So, you know, it's a pretty good option. Sun on the right is using Aether. The reason why you want Aether with Faithful Axe is because you basically get hit back twice, and then your spec is ready. Which means that on the next encounter, you will have Aether ready from the get-go. This is important because it essentially means that whoever will attack you, who will typically be essentially at full HP, you'll be able to heal a ton off of them. Instead of if you had Slaying Axe where you would just get hit back, and then, you know, proc Aether under 3 HP left to heal yourself for 1 HP. And even if you don't double, it doesn't matter, because what ends up happening is you get hit, you hit back, you get hit, you proc. You know. So it ends up being the same result either way. You're still going to proc Aether on your first hit, which is pretty helpful. Do keep in mind though, in Aether raids, Flame Emperor is kind of not great because his speed is kind of trash. Not gonna lie. He can work with Legendary Eliwood as I mentioned earlier, but other than this, not exactly the best spot. As for the second bunch of sets, this is mostly for its Slaying Axe. Set on the right is a classic Gale Force set with Attack Smoke. The idea is just to go into an enemy, hit, get hit, hit again, proc Gale Force, kill something else, and whatever's around the unit will essentially lose 7 attack, which means that on enemy phase you should hopefully be able to tank safely. Again, you can combo this into Eliwood. If you do so, ideally, if you are doing so, you can actually completely give up on quick riposte and instead run darting stance or swift stance. Swift stance will push your speed to 48 with legendary Eliwood, whereas darting stance will push it to 50. It's really up to you. It's with basically go with what makes you feel more comfortable. So swift stance essentially will just mean that you are going to be bulkier. Even if you don't have legendary Eliwood, this is better to do it this way either way. It's just that you will want to run quick riposte. The idea is that you have enough speed to block the follow-up. You know, just to block the follow-up, and then rely on Bolt Fighter / quick riposte to get the, you know, follow-up regardless. Another thing to note is for the set on the left, Ignis. Now, this will require Brave Lucina support, obviously. Get hit, proc with Bolt Fighter, which would not really work on enemy phase, because on enemy phase you'd basically get hit back again, you proc nothing, because you got 3 charge there. You get an extra charge through Bolt Fighter, and that's what makes the difference and allows you to proc Ignis. If you have Brave Lucina, what you can do is just put her in range, and suddenly you get 2 charge, proc Ignis. Do note, if you do not want to use Brave Lucina with her, or him rather, you can actually run Bonfire. That's also an option, if you want to be good on both phases. Again, this, just as the other set is concerned, the idea is for you to be speedy enough to block a follow-up. Not speedy enough to get the follow-up. Quick Riposte and Bolt Fighter will grant you the follow-up. Your awkward speed is actually very good in blocking follow-ups, and this is another reason why Brave Lucina works really well with him. Whatever speed you are at, you can actually push a bit more speed with Brave Lucina. For example, you could just combo double dry speed with Brave Lucina, and suddenly you're at 47 speed. Or you could just do, for example, double drive res and then Gerskogel, which will push your def to 51 and your res to 45. Makes you a lot harder to kick out of quick riposte, while also pushing your speed to 41, which makes it harder for the enemy to double you. And if they don't double you, you double them back because quick riposte anyway. So yeah, I think you get the idea. So as far as the tier list is concerned, there has been 4 changes. I've decided to put Dorcas down a tier because Flame Emperor is just better in every way. That, and also Halloween Dorcas was kind of on the edge of S-. He was already not that great, essentially. As far as S- was concerned, I'd say he was probably the weakest, and therefore that's why he went down a tier. That's kind of a given at this point. So yeah, Flame Emperor is an S-, and therefore Dorcas is an A+. As far as Bartre and Heath are concerned, they're kind of in the A tier bunch. I've said this before, but the tiers where I consider units are worth investing in are A+ and higher. A tier and lower are typically units that needs either a rebalance, a refine, or both. There's just no way for me to just be like, oh yeah, just plus 10 that Heath or that Cormag or Cynthia, or how about that Garneth that's completely worse than Ray? Ooh boy. Yeah, or how about Joshua when Itsuki exists? Ooh boy. Like, no. No. Hell no. That's kind of just how it is. So yeah. As a result, you have one unit that's kind of worth it, which is the Flame Emperor, and then you have 2 units that are just in limbo, I guess would be the best way to put it. Kind of like Finn. Can Finn get his pref already? That'd be great. Thanks. But, yeah. I think there's not much else to say here. This batch of unit is pretty self-explanatory. But yeah. In conclusion, Heath and Bartre are kind of just outdone by other units. Flame Emperor is still outdone by the easiest 5-star exclusive to +10 as far as green armored units are concerned. But he can still pull his weight if you just don't want to invest anything in Ephraim. So, you know. Still overall not that bad. Not that great either, but not that bad. And with that said, I think I'm gonna call it a stream, call it a video here. There's not, as I said, there's not much else to say here. These characters are very straightforward. That's kind of what happens when there's no pref. When units have pref, there's more to talk about if the pref is good. Like Brunya. The video about Brunya was longer than the video about these 3 fools together. But you know, details. But yeah. See you all later. Have a nice rest of the day, everyone.